But there are other issues. For instance, Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives many examples in the Quran. He gives many, many examples. You want to do an example before we go? There's just one? One of my favorites? Okay, we'll do one of my favorites. Some of you may have heard this before, but that's okay. It's good to remember. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks in Surah Al-Hajj. Surah Al-Hajj is surah number 22. This, I believe, is ayah number 31. حُنَفَاءَ لِلَّهِ غَيْرَ مُشْرِكِينَ بِهِ. They are solely dedicated to Allah while not committing any shirk with Him whatsoever. وَمَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. And whoever was to commit shirk with Allah, or is to commit shirk with Allah, فَكَأَنَّمَا خَرَّ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Then it is as though he fell from the sky. I want you to remember this example. Whoever does shirk with Allah is like someone who fell from the sky. فَكَأَنَّمَا خَرَّ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. This is the first part of the example Allah gives, the comparison between the mushrik and the guy falling from the sky. Then He says, فَتَخْطَفُهُ الطَّيْرُ. Then birds are snatching off of him. Birds are having lunch on this guy. Birds are eating him. أَوْ تَهْوِي بِهِ الرِّيحِ فِي مَكَانٍ سَحِيقٍ. Or wind is blowing him away to a far-off, uncharted place. Three parts of the example. First part, he's falling from where? The sky. Second part, what's happening? Birds are eating him. Third part. Wind blows him away to a far-off place. Nodeki, a famous Orientalist, one of the first pioneer Orientalists who critiqued the Quran, he wrote that an example, the point of an example is to make sense to the audience. After all, why does a teacher give an example? To make the subject easy. Right? The subject is hard, let me give you an example. Now if my example is harder than the subject, then it kind of beats the point. Right? So you have to give examples to the audience, to the listener, to the student, that makes the subject easy, that makes the subject more approachable. It's something you can relate to. Nodeki argues, look, falling from the sky, nobody's ever seen it. I can't relate to it. Neither could the Arabs. Even if not the day of airplanes, who could ever have imagined falling from the sky? Example doesn't make sense. Then he says birds are eating from him. He argues 9.8 something meters per second square. What kind of birds are these? That this guy is falling with acceleration due to gravity and these birds are still eating him. And what size of birds are these? They're eating a live man as he's falling from the sky. Beyond imagination. Can't see this happening. Then he says, well, you're falling from the sky. If you fall off to an uncharted place or you fall in a famous place, aren't you equally dead? So what's the point of falling in an uncharted place? So he critiques the example. He says the example doesn't make sense. The only problem, once again, his criticism is based on proper Arabic without an understanding of what? Ancient Arabic. One of the things I didn't tell you about ancient Arabic is that it has its own expressions, idioms. An idiom in English is that's cool. If you said that's cool 100 years ago, I said, what are you talking about? It's Florida. It's not cool. So you wouldn't think of that's cool the same way. The words are the same, but the meanings changed. Isn't that true? Right? The words are exactly the same. We're living in crazy times. Kids go to a basketball game, they come out and they say, that's cool. And the other kid says, that was hot. And they mean the same thing. Right? So, expressions change. Expressions change. The Quran uses expressions of the ancient Arabs. Did those expressions change over time? Yes. You have to understand, if you take the expression and you understand it literally, you've lost the meaning. It's not literal, it's an expression. You have to understand the expression behind it. Like when somebody says to you, no use crying over spilt milk. You say, I didn't spill milk, I lost my job, man. You've missed the point, all right? There's an expression. So, but anyhow, let's quickly go to this example so we finish on time. I have how much time? Okay, so I'll take my time. All right, 15 minutes. I'll take less, inshallah. All right, so here's the thing. Allah Azza wa Jal speaks of the one falling from the sky. By the way, who was this person being compared to? The guy falling from the sky, what's he? Mushrik. Most of the Arabs at the time. Most of these Arabs didn't believe in an afterlife. Most Arabs believe that the only thing you have to look forward to is what? Death. There's nothing after that. It's game over. That's it. So if the only thing ahead of you is what? Death. And you're being reminded about hellfire and resurrection and the sun and the moon colliding, you say, No, man. In hiya illa hayatuna dunya. This is just worldly life of ours. Namutu wa nahi. We live, we die. That's it. There's nothing more. I don't understand this whole akhirah stuff. Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks to this adamant, this disbelieving mind, trying to relate to this audience. The only thing they have to look forward to if there's no hereafter is what again? Death. If you know anything about the Arabs, they were a warrior people. They were really big on their tribal warfare pride. Right? Nowadays we have sports teams. Right? We take pride in a sports team and people paint their faces and all that kind of stuff. Their pride was their tribe and their battles. The worst kind of death legacy you can leave behind is the death of a coward. The death of a loser. Because after all, once you're dead and there's no hereafter, what's the only thing left of you? Your legacy, your reputation. That's all that's left. So now, to the Arabs, they use this expression, falling from the sky, even before the Qur'an was revealed. They used to say falling from the sky all the time. But you know what they meant by it? They meant that there are two tribes fighting. One tribe is on top of the cliff, the other tribe is on the bottom of the cliff. Which one has the advantage? The guy's on top. Despite being on top of the cliff, if they still lost in battle, and the enemy did what with their bodies? Chuck them off the cliff. They used to call this what? Falling from the sky. There are two scenarios. Either they lost, which means they were lousy fighters, despite having the advantage, or they were running away, retreating from the enemy, and in their retreat they trip, and what happens? They fall, so they died the death of a coward. Either they died the death of a loser or a coward. These are the worst legacies that the Arabs would ever want to leave behind. The ugliest kind of end they could imagine would be captured in the words, falling from the sky. Allah speaks to these mushrik Arabs who don't have any concept of the hereafter, who have no concept of the humiliation of the Day of Judgment, so He gives them a word that will help them understand from their worldview. What's the ugliest thing you can imagine? Let me tell you, shirk is like that. Shirk is like falling from the sky. When you die in battle, you know, this is ancient human tradition. When people die in battle, two sides collide, corpses are lying all over the place. Once the battle is done, what happens to those corpses? Each side comes with their people and takes their dead and gives them a proper burial. Isn't that what happens? Unless you feel that your soldier was a traitor or a humiliation or an embarrassment to your tribe, then nobody comes for you. And when nobody comes for you, guess what comes for you? Birds, at-tayr, which in Jahili shi'r, in classical poetry, is used more than often for vultures. Birds of carrion, eating dead meat. So now birds are gnawing away at this humiliated corpse, who is disassociated from its own tribe people. They don't even want to have anything to do with him. These disgusting birds eat their lunch, and even they don't want any more. Even they don't want any more. Now what comes? Now a wind comes and blows off whatever scum of you is left into uncharted territory. You're just trash on the earth. Decomposed trash on the earth. The ugliest ending that the Arab could imagine has been displayed in such beautiful terms, with one example, just so he could get an idea what you're dealing with, what you think shirk is a small thing. Put things in your perspective. You see how powerful the Qur'an is in its examples? The thing